Welcome to this first introductory video for our new unit that looks at the way in which Germany transitioned from a Weimar representative democracy to a totalitarian state under the Nazis, or NSDAP, between 1919 and 1933. Now, this unit we're going to look at focuses on 1919 to 1939, which is the start of World War II. But we will pick up on elements up until 1945, because it's really important, if we study the Nazi era, that we do take into account what happened during World War II and what happened during the Holocaust to the Jews. But the main aim of this video is to give you an overall view of what we're trying to achieve in this unit. So let's explore our first concepts. As we work through these concepts, you might like to write down some of the key terms, record these ideas for your study. Our first era that we need to be aware of in this unit is the period of German history that led to the rise of the Weimar Republic and the Nazis, and that is Imperial Germany, or the Deutsches Reich. And you can see a few notes on the screen about this now. The Deutsches Reich, Imperial Germany, finally under Kaiser Wilhelm II, was the Germany that existed during World War I. It was considered a time of a glorious German government. It was authoritarian, but it had elements of the parliamentary system that you've been doing some work on in class. It was bicameral, but the two houses of the German Reich's parliament were very weak. They were the Reichstag and the Bundesrat. And this term Reichstag, a word that's often applied to the lower house of German parliament, is going to be used a few times. But it's important to know right at the outset that the Reichstag has changed. Under Imperial Germany, we had a constitutional monarchy existing, but the constitution gave a huge amount of power to the German emperor. It was authoritarian, and this state was actually born in the declaration of Germany as a country, and that was done in the Hall of Mirrors at the Treaty of Versailles, the Hall of Mirrors in the Palace of Versailles in France in 1871. The second period of German government that we need to be aware of comes into place at the end of World War I, at the defeat of Germany in 1918. And it is the Weimar Republic, and it's an incredibly important era to be aware of in our unit. It lays the foundations for the Nazi era. The Weimar Republic, or the Germans' People's State, or Deutsche Volksstaat, or more commonly the Deutsche Republic, the German Republic, existed between 1919 and 1939. The term itself, Weimar Republic, really wasn't used at the time. Weimar is a city in northern Germany, in Thuringia, okay, and it is the home of a lot of German culture. And we're going to revisit this idea a bit, but the Weimar Republic is a term used by Hitler in a speech. It had two presidents, Friedrich Ebert and Paul von Hindenburg. Now, these two presidents had to grapple with a very, very difficult time in German history. The Weimar Republic was a bicameral representative democracy. It's something similar to what we would recognise as Australians. Our third period is one that we really need to be aware of, and it begins in 1933. And as we look at the notes here on the screen, it's very important that you immediately start making some notes down so you're familiar with these terms and you can start doing some study around them. We're now talking about the Third Reich, or Nazi Germany. And Nazi Germany existed between 1933 and 1945. It saw off the end of the Weimar Republic, and it created its own one-party police state, a totalitarian state. It's a dictatorship. Now, what you're seeing at the top of this slide is the way that the nation of Germany's flags changed during this era. One of the comments made by the Nazis was that they wanted to recapture the past, recapture the glories of Imperial Germany. And you can see that the Nazis got rid of the colours of the Weimar Republic, the gold, what the Nazis referred to as a mustard, and returned to imperial colours, the word Reich reappears in the name of the German state. When we're looking at Nazi Germany, we're looking at the creation of a form of dictatorship that is very peculiar to the 20th and 21st century, a totalitarian state. And we're going to need to understand that term, and it's something we're going to revisit in class and on videos at a later point. It is also a one-party state. While it may have had, at least on a superficial level, some form of parliament existing, the Reichstag does exist. It is a parliament that only has one political party present in it. When we think about our representative democracies, parliament is competed with for power, or competed in for power, by multiple parties. Nazi Germany is a one-party state. The Nazi political party is the only one that is allowed to exist in the country. It's also a police state, a state where the powers of the police, powers of law enforcement, are very, very strong and control the way in which society operates. And when we're talking about those two elements, they are elements of a totalitarian state, a state that seeks to control the totality, the entirety of the nation. All right, let's go through a few of these terms here. When we're talking about the Nazis, we're actually talking about a political party in Germany that went by the name the Nationalist Socialist Deutsche Arbeiterpartei, which translates as the German National Socialist German Workers' Party. So I'll say it again in English for you. The National Socialist German Workers' Party. National Socialist Deutsche Arbeiterpartei. For short, historians tend to call this, even when they're writing essays in English, the NSDAP, National Socialist Deutsche Arbeiterpartei. German, I've said it wrong again, I'm sorry, the National Socialist German Workers' Party. It's a radical, right-wing and racist political party led by Adolf Hitler. Hitler was the final chancellor, the equivalent of prime minister of Weimar Germany. He came to office in 1933, and in 1934 he took the office of the head of state, the president of the Weimar Republic, and merged it with the position of prime minister of Germany. These two offices brought together as one: prime minister, chancellor, president, the equivalent of our governor general, and blended them into one role. Okay, and this merged position became known as Führer. So far, we've got a few terms that we need to deal with. The Third Reich, totalitarian state, one-party state, police state, NSDAP, and Führer. We can add into that 3 different time frames that you should be able to study, the most important of them being 1919 to 1933, the Weimar Republic, and 1933 to 1945, the German Third Reich. Now, in 1933, the Weimar Republic's bicameral system was replaced with a single House of Parliament, the Reichstag, and it was controlled entirely, within a very short time, by the Nazi Party. It was renamed the Großdeutscher Reich, Reichstag, which means the Greater German Reichstag, as opposed to the Weimar Reichstag, Großdeutscher Reichstag. Now, you might see in the writing there's a B-type shape in Gross. It's a letter in the German alphabet that is, I guess, best represented in our pronunciation by a double S. Okay, now this Großdeutscher Reichstag, the Nazi Reichstag, only met 12 times in the 12 years that the Nazi Party were in power. So it really wasn't a representative democracy in the sense of Parliament having any power at all. Power was exercised via the Führer and the leading members of the Nazi Party. We need to understand that the totalitarian state is being created between 1933 and 1939. In 1939, World War II begins, and that totalitarian state is at war with Britain, the United States, the Soviet Union. it's at war with other countries as well, including Australia. During that Second World War, it was responsible for the Holocaust, the Shoah, a genocide of between 6 and 11 million Jews, mainly Jews, and others, including Roma or Gypsies, Slavs, Poles, Catholics, communists, political opponents, homosexuals. Many of these people went to concentration camps. And it led to the creation of our first concept, or our first articulation of the concept of crimes against humanity and war crimes. So in 1945, the Third Reich essentially collapsed, defeated by its enemies, the allies of World War II, mainly led by the United States, Britain, the democracies of the West, and another totalitarian regime, Stalinist USSR. Now, our unit is particularly concerned with the period where Nazis rose to power and created their totalitarian state.